Welcome to Gardening in July. As you can tell, even though it is almost mid-July here, it's still a little bit chilly, even on a sunny morning, which also is going to explain a bit of the pitiful sight of some of the things in the garden. You know, for warm weather crops this year, I honestly have no idea if we are going to get much of a crop from things like our summer squash. Now, thankfully, the peppers and the tomatoes I have growing in the high tunnels and some cold frames, so they're doing okay. But, I mean, just look at the size of the zucchini and the winter squash, and honestly, even the cucumbers. The only thing of warm weather crops that seems to be doing well that's not in some type of environment that's producing a little bit of extra heat is our beans. So this is one of our zucchini plants that I actually got as a start. So these I did not direct sow. And it's sending up the very first few little flowers, but there's really not a lot of leaves on here. So I hope that we'll actually get a strong, robust production of zucchini. Now, look at how tiny this one is. It is so little. It'll be interesting to see how much it actually produces. Now, these were all varying starts that I got. This is the zucchini that I direct sowed. And so I am really glad that I made the call to actually go ahead and pick up some starts, because you guys, I mean, I'll be lucky if these direct sow produce probably anything. They'll probably only produce for a couple of weeks at the very end of the season before they're wiped out by our cool temps and first frosts. Now, unfortunately, we cannot control the weather. But there are things that we can do to put into place to ensure, or at least as close as you can get when it comes to gardening and ensuring a harvest, ways to kind of switch plans midstream and just go with what the season is dictating. So I have direct sown 2 times, sometimes 3 times in some of the place for our squash, but we were getting so much rain and it was so cold, most of it just ended up rotting in the ground. And we're so late into our growing season now, there's absolutely no point in trying to direct sow more summer or winter squash or those warm weather crops. They'll never reach a large enough size to get any type of harvest. But things that do like to be wet and cooler and that will grow well with that is the cool weather crops. And if you are planning on doing any type of fall garden, you actually are going to be planting it in the middle of summer. I've got a video that walks through more of that we'll make sure and link to, as well as lists of crops on the blog. I have on the website, on my blog, I've got an article that tells you exactly all of the cool weather crops that you can grow for a fall garden, how many weeks before your first average frost date in the fall to plant those. Or if you have my book, The Family Garden Plan, that's all done out there for you as well. So here is where we have a lot of beds that just don't have anything growing in them because the seeds failed to germinate and they didn't grow. So I am going to be putting in right now a bunch of those fall crops. So for us, that I'm going to put in is some cauliflower. I'm also going to be sowing some beets. Pretty much everything in the brassica family. I'm definitely doing a lot of cabbage. I'm going to be trying something this fall where you grow a fall crop of cabbage, and then right when the weather turns, you bury some of the cabbage and actually use root cellar system in the ground, very similar to what I already do with the potatoes and the carrots as well as the beets. So I'm going to be testing that with the cabbage this year. Really excited for that. And then I'm also going to do some more broccoli. Broccoli and cauliflower are one of our favorite vegetables to eat. And I really, between the spring and the fall garden, that's my goal, is to be able to grow enough that we can eat fresh eating, but then have extra of these to freeze and freeze dry as well. So I'm just putting in all of these crops now. I'm banking on that the rest of the summer is going to be very indicative of what the spring and early summer has been, and that is unseasonably cool for us and more moisture than normal. So if that holds true, these crops should do extremely well, and I'm just going to go ahead and direct sow them outdoors rather than starting them indoors. Now, if you live in an area where it's really, really warm and you're worried about bolting, or you're having a hotter summer and want to grow fall crops, you can seed start them indoors because that way you're able to manipulate and maintain temperature a lot easier as well as moisture levels. But for us this year, I don't think that's going to be a problem. So I'm just going to go ahead and direct sow all of these in the garden now. One thing that's doing extremely well is my celery. So this is the year that I'm planning on attempting to grow a year's worth of celery. I've never grown a large celery crop before, so I'm really excited. These are almost, actually that one is, these are getting really close to being large enough for the first harvest. So this is very exciting. I'm also going to use some of the leaves and make some celery salt. So here is the spring cabbage, and believe it or not, at almost mid-July, we finally have had enough warm weather. This is just getting ready. This one is a bigger head. That one I could probably go ahead and almost harvest now. Let these ones go a little bit longer, but these are actually coming along really, really nice. Because of this extremely cool spring and now summer, it seems that most of our harvest is delayed by at least a month. So usually my strawberries are completely done by this time in July, but they're just now beginning to come on. And strawberries are really, by about the time that the original plant reaches about 3 years of age, you really start to see a decline in production. Now, you can let the little runners that they send out, you can allow those to become new plants, and that's why strawberry patches can feel like that once you plant them, they're a perennial and they just keep growing and producing and grow on and on. However, when you're growing them like this in the green stock, which I recommend if you battle with slugs and snails. Now, the ducks should be able to start patrolling hopefully within about another 4 weeks. They're almost large enough. But the only way that I have been able to successfully grow strawberries without having them completely decimated by slugs, meaning they ate all of the strawberries before I could get to them or ate so much of the leaves that the plants were killed, is I started growing 3 years ago. I started growing them in this vertical tower. Now, technically, slugs could still crawl up it, but I can put it on our cement patio, and that seems to deter the slugs from coming and getting into the strawberry plants. However, they are now going on 3 years old, and some of the strawberries are just not looking so good. They've really reached the end of their lifespan. So I actually ordered some strawberry starts, and it's a much later than I would normally plant strawberries, but I'm going to be replacing some of those with some of these newer strawberry plants. Now, if you're curious about growing strawberries, how to grow them, I've got a full article for you, so we'll make sure we include that in the links below, and you can go and check that out too. I've also got a coupon code if you want to order one of the green stocks. We'll make sure that that's in the video description as well. One of the things about homesteading and gardening is you have to hold a lot of your plans quite loosely and be ready to pivot or to make changes because there's always outside circumstances that none of us can control. Another thing that I like to do in the July garden is to keep up with my succession sowing of our lettuce. I actually like to let some of the lettuce go ahead and go to seed because that's how I have a lot of our lettuce. I haven't planted any lettuce so far this year because it all has self-sown in the garden. But I am going to sow a little bit more lettuce right now because I think most of the seed that I did have down has already germinated for this summer. And I like to make sure that we have a continual fresh harvest of our salad greens and especially our lettuce all throughout the summer. I should say correction. I did plant the lettuce in the high tunnel, but I didn't have to sow or plant any of the lettuce out in the main vegetable garden because the seed all carried that far out.